Welcome. Welcome to this congregation where we seek to foster community, to grow our spirits, to serve others, and to work for justice. We are glad that you have joined us this morning in our sacred cyberspace, and we hope you'll experience love, acceptance, and inspiration. After the service, please join us for our Zoom coffee hour. Pardon me while I get to the correct piece. We're going to continue with our monthly touchstone themes, which strive to help us shape our days and guide our journey. Our December topic is kindness. Ian McLaren wrote, "Be kind. Everyone you meet is fighting a hard battle." Kindness is considered a virtue, a moral obligation, the currency of compassion, an act of solidarity, radical hospitality, communion, a lifeline, a balm in Gilead, and much more. Human civilization would not long survive without it. In fact, it is kindness that civilizes us and those with whom we interact. We are privileged to once again have Emily Quarles-Mowrer with us today. As many of you know, Emily is a child of the UU minister and has been preaching sermons of her own since 2006. She currently lives in Gilbertsville, PA, with her husband, her 2 daughters, 4 cats, and 1 very outnumbered dog. The title of her message for us today is Our Actions Echo. Mother Teresa is quoted as having said, "Kind words are short and easy to speak, but their echoes are truly endless." And Emily reflects, "The other day, I scrounged up a coupon and the change from inside my center console to buy myself a cup of Dunkin' decaf. When I got to the window and held out my money, the 2 excited teens manning the register told me that the car in front of me had already paid my bill. I was so grateful that I wanted to cry. That small act made echoed through my day and renewed my faith in humanity. In a tumultuous world, maybe so much like the one we're having right now, how do we hold on to the fact that our actions matter?" And now let us enter into worship together. Our prelude today is brought to us once again by Avi Wisnia, our very valued musician, and he's chosen a song, "Put a Little Love in Your Heart" by Jackie DeShannon.
Think of your fellow man, lend him a helping hand, put a little love in your heart. You see it's getting late, oh please don't hesitate, put a little love in your heart, and the world will be a better place, and the world will be a better place for you and me. You just wait and see. Another day goes by, still the children cry. Put a little love in your heart. If you want the world to know, we won't let hatred grow. Put a little love in your heart, and the world will be a better place, and the world will be a better place for you and me. You just wait and see. down. Put a little love in your heart. I hope when you decide kindness will be your guide. Put a little love in your heart, and the world will be a better place. And the world will be a better place for you and me. You just wait and see. Put a little love in your heart. 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 Put a little love in your heart.
Thanks, Avi. We always truly value how you open up our service and make us just have a little brighter day. And next, we have a very special appearance. And I'll give you a little hint. If you want to participate, bring out your order of service so that you can read along.
We light our chalice this morning, grateful for the love that we experience in this beloved community. May this flame light our way to inner peace, to love for each other, and faith in ourselves.
That was so fun to see our Machera family friends from afar. That was Felice, Yoka, Elise, and Gabriella, for those of you who might not know them as well. It is always fun to let this technology actually work for us to reunite us with our friends who can't be with us. Our opening words today are brought to us by Henri Nouwen. Is it possible to grow in kindness, to become a kind person? Well, yes, but it requires discipline. Here is the great challenge. All people, whatever their color, religion, or sex, belong to humankind and are called to be kind to one another, treating one another as brothers and sisters. And next we'll have our Director of Religious Exploration, Angela Connon, and her friend Martha bring us our message for all ages. Angela?
Hey everybody, I'm here with my friend Martha the cow, and I have a great story for you today. It's one I really like. I bet a lot of you know me and will be able to figure out what I like about this story. So I'll wait till the end to tell you just what I like about it. It's called Strictly No Elephants. And here we go. Strictly No Elephants. The trouble with having a tiny elephant for a pet is that you never quite fit in. No one else has an elephant. Every day I take my elephant for a walk. His is a very thoughtful sort of walk. He doesn't like the cracks in the sidewalk much. I always go back and help him over. That's what friends do, lift each other over the cracks. Today I'm walking my tiny elephant to number 17. It's Pet Club Day, and everyone will be there. There they all go. Come along, there's a good boy. I coax him the last few feet. It'll be fine. When I look up, there's a sign on the door. Strictly no elephants. My tiny elephant leads me back to the sidewalk, never minding the cracks. That's what friends do, brave the scary things for you. Did you try to go to the pet club meeting too? The girl asked. Yes, I say, but they don't allow elephants. The sign didn't mention skunks, the girl says, but they don't want us to play with them either. They don't know any better, I tell her. He doesn't stink, the girl adds. No, he doesn't, I agree. What if we start our own club? Come along, I say, making certain that my tiny elephant follows me, because that's what friends do. Never leave anyone behind. Look at all these amazing pets they found to join their club. Who ever heard of a pet giraffe? We can play here, one of our new friends says. All of us. So we paint our own sign. All are welcome. My tiny elephant will give you directions if you need them. Because that's what friends do. The end. I hope you enjoyed that story. That one's a favorite of mine because I love the parade of strange pets. I can't imagine what it would be like to have a pet narwhal or a pet bat. I like the friendship messages in there, and I love the all are welcome message in there. And so I hope you enjoyed our story, and I'll see you next time. Bye.
So how many of you actually guessed what was Angela's favorite thing about that story? Congratulations. You know her really well and must be a good friend. So Avi returns with our musical interlude, singing the hymn 1031, Filled with Loving Kindness.
May I be filled with loving kindness. May I be well. May I be filled with loving kindness. May I be well. May I be peaceful and at ease. May I be whole. May you be filled with loving kindness. May you be well. May you be filled with loving kindness. May you be well. May you be peaceful and at ease. May you be whole. May we be filled with loving kindness. May we be well. May we be filled with loving kindness. May we be well. May we be peaceful and at ease. May we be whole.
Thanks, Avi, for putting us in just the right frame of mind for what comes next, which will be Emily sharing a reading with us. Emily?
Good morning, everyone. It's so good to see you all. So my reading this morning is called Car Wash, and it is by Robert Fulghum. He is the one who originally wrote All I Need to Know for Kindergarten, All I Need to Know in Life I Learned in Kindergarten. And he still has a journal that he writes like a blog post. And this one is from September of this year. It's titled Car Wash. Many years from now, after round of uncertain times that will have become history, there will be a plethora of PhD theses and shelves packed with reflections by scholars and pundits analyzing the early years of this decade. Most will be serious. Most will be focused on the multiple tragedies of these times. But as long as people exist, there will also be comedy to balance the solemnity of daily life. For example, at a car wash, I was second in line waiting to enter the washing tunnel. In front of me was a large late model station wagon. Suddenly, the rear window slid down, revealing two little boys, masked like small outlaws, as the current protocols require. Because of the masks, their ages were unclear, but there was one large boy and one small boy, so my guess is 7 and 9 years old. They waved at me, pulled down their masks, stuck out their tongues, and fell back into the rear cargo area of the car, laughing. Just then, the entrance sign flashed green, pull ahead. Their car lurched forward, the woman driver concentrating on getting her left front tire in the slot required for stopping while the car wash commenced its action. Water for the soak cycle spewed forthwith, and the rear window remained open. What could I do? Jump out and run through the deluge to alert the driver? No, too late. Maybe honk my horn, only to alarm the driver and have her panic. No, too risky. So I waited and watched while the washing apparatus commenced. Soak, then soapy foam, then a rinse, then a spray of something else, another soak, and finally the spot-free rinse. Not only did the rear window remain open, but I could see that the two outlaws had lowered the side windows as well and were rollicking back and forth with glee, waving at me between rounds of spray. The flashing sign turned green for wash finished, and their car shot forward at speed without pausing for the air dry function. What? The car braked to a halt out on the concrete pad. A young woman jumped out of the driver's seat, flung open a side door. She grabbed the hand of one of the little outlaws, pulled him out, he was sopping wet, and began trying to spank him on his backside while he ran in a circle around her to escape his punishment. The young woman was shouting at him while the kid hollered back, and meanwhile, water was dribbling out of the car. The younger outlaw, also sopping wet, got out of the other side of the car and ran for it, disappearing around the side of the car wash building. The older outlaw broke free and ran for the bushes at the end of the lot, with the young woman in hot pursuit. Alarmed, I drove right on through the car wash, thinking I could always go around and start over. I could have minded my own business, I know, but that's not one of my social skills. I pulled up behind the chaos, got out, and walked over to the young woman, now leaning on the front fender, head in hands. Can I help? She burst into tears. To make a long story short, it turns out that the young woman had been taking care of the two boys at home for 6 months, her nephews, while her sister and brother-in-law continued their full-time jobs. Now she was about at the end of her tether. Sobbing, she said that school was starting on Tuesday, and if she managed not to commit double homicide in the next 3 days, the end was in sight. But now both had run away, and she couldn't find them. I am never, ever, ever going to have children, she sobbed. So, Fulghum to the rescue. I found the big kid lying down in the dirt off in the bushes, now caked with mud from having been sopping wet from the car wash and bleeding a bit where he had skinned his knees and hands when he fell down on some gravel while fleeing. His eyes were wide with fear because he knew he was going to be sorry if his aunt got a hold of him again. So I persuaded him to come with me to look for his little brother, who was found around the corner, crouched down, cowering behind a dumpster. I persuaded him to come with me and his brother to the convenience store at the nearby gas station, lured by the promise of ice cream on a stick. One for him, one for his brother, one for me, and one for their aunt. The one for the aunt was the idea of the two outlaws, bless their hearts. We walked back to find the aunt, still leaning on the fender, still weeping. She had managed to open all the doors of the car to dry out the wet from the inside, but the car was still dribbling water out its doors. Clearly relieved when she saw us coming, she ran to the little boys as they ran to her. They collided in a great embrace of reunion, mushing wet clothes, mud, blood, tears, and ice cream into a clammy mess. When calm was restored, I said to the young woman, someday when all three of you are older, this will be a very funny story. You remember that time in the car wash? And they climbed into the damp car and drove away, not to live happily ever after, but at least possessors of a shared memory that will always add light and laughter to these uncertain times.
Thank you, Emily. That was interesting. We look forward to hearing more reflections on that as we listen to your message. But now is the time in our service when we are giving, certainly an act of kindness. The recipient of our split plate collection for the month of December has been the American Civil Liberties Union. The ACLU works in the courts, the legislatures, and communities to defend and preserve the individual rights and liberties guaranteed to all people in this country by our Constitution and the laws of the United States. Please be generous and give to this great cause. You'll find a link for our online donation platform in our chat box. And of course, you're always welcome to mail a check for your split plate donation to our UUFLB Center. And so now I'll ask Emily to join us again to deliver her message.
Our actions echo. A few years ago, there was an insurance commercial that featured a person opening a door for someone else, and then that person helping someone who dropped their papers, and then that person doing something else nice for another person, with the message that kindness spreads and that each person's actions have the capacity to be the catalyst to another's kind deed. Psychology Today had an article that was published November 29th, titled, "What if we acted a little kinder than we felt or thought?" Now, the article itself did not impress me very much, but the title was great. That's because the title really did make me think about my own life and my own choices, and what might happen if I chose compassion over expedience a little more often. The title reminded me of something that UU minister Reverend Quarles-Mowrer once said: "Ministry requires us to be better than we want to be." And when she was talking about ministry, she may or may not have been talking about her actual profession. I admit the conversation was a long time ago, and I only remember the quote because I wrote it down to hang it on my desk. But when I use the term ministry, I'm using it in the capacity of to serve, in that we all minister to one another when we offer one another kindness. The other day, I was walking in the park with one of my neighbors, and I saw a brightly painted stone on the ground that simply said the word love. A bit further down the trail, there was another stone, and then another. The stones all had different colors and different artwork. Some had words, other pictures, some were abstract. It made me smile to see them and reminded me we don't have to see a person to touch their day. In fact, this story from Kindness Stories on the Random Act of Kindness Foundation's website shows that just noticing someone is in need and reaching out with something simple can make a huge difference. This anonymous woman writes, "My neighborhood was not always the kindest, friendliest place. My husband, my 8-month-old daughter, and myself rarely exchanged any type of communication, even pleasantries, with our neighbors. I had struggled numerous times to wipe the snow or scrape the ice off my car with my arm or a credit card, since I didn't have a snow brush. One day, in the dead of the brutal, cold, snowy winter, I walked up to my car with my 8-month-old in her car seat. There was a snow brush on my windshield with a note that said, For the woman with the baby, you're already struggling. Hope this makes your life a tiny bit better. There was no sign, there was no indication who left it. It was pure kindness. I drive my kids to and from school each day. I can empathize with her trying to get a toddler or a baby carriage into the car on a snowy day. Now, probably I'm wasting a little bit of fuel when I could have them on the bus, but I enjoy dropping them off and being able to say goodbye. In fact, I even wave to one of the other moms every morning as she drives up the big hill that we're driving down. In fact, we decide how late to school we actually are by where in our commute we are when we pass her. I enjoy picking them up too, waiting in that long line of other parents, driving slowly past the faculty, staff, and administrators who run the car line. Everybody smiles and waves at our cars. It's like a daily welcome parade in a time when we all have to be so careful about staying away from each other. I can see their eyes crinkled above their masked faces and know that there's a smile hiding in there somewhere. It always brightens my day when Miss Susie waves with both hands and gives a big thumbs up. We're a community, even though this year our PTO can't even enter the school. We care about each other, even though the kids open the car doors themselves and the faculty can't lean in with a final, "Have a great evening, enjoy your weekend." One day as I drove down the street to pick up the kids at my usual 3 miles above the speed limit, there was a very impatient car behind me. They zoomed up behind me as I coasted down the big hill. They're right on my bumper as I climbed back up out of the valley. And when I slowed down to 15 miles per hour, they honked their horn and pulled around me in the opposing lane. I don't know if they even realized that we were in an active school zone and every car was moving slowly. It's funny to me that I remember that incident so clearly, and not so clearly all the times when someone has yielded when they didn't have to or slowed down to let me in. I once read an essay where the writer reframed his experience of driving behind a slow minivan. I'm a slow wagon, but slow minivans, same kind of thing. It's like driving behind a pace car that would keep him from being pulled over for speeding. That writer has something in common with Brooke Jones, who writes for the Random Act of Kindness Foundation's website. In her blog entry from October 29th of this year, called Explore the Good, Jones describes a simple 3-column list that she uses to organize her thoughts in this time. In the first column, she writes about something that she's experiencing that makes her sad or makes her angry, makes her upset, something that she's not feeling good about. In the second column, she reframes that negative thing that she's experiencing to find something positive about it. And in the third column, I think this is the most important column, she writes an action that she can take to support the positive aspects she's outlined in the second column. So as an example from her list, she's upset, just like a lot of us are, that she can't see her loved ones. So her reframing of this limitation is that she can connect in new ways, just like we're connecting today, and that she's been reminded that life is precious and that we should make a point to remind the important people in our lives about how much we love them. The actions that she can take to support her reframed emotion are writing a letter by hand, mailing it out through the post office, maybe sending a care package or calling on a telephone. I know Jones isn't the only one who feels distant from her family. I found a Zoom call on Thanksgiving was not really a substitute for a 4-day visit from my sister. But just reaching out in the small ways we can helps a little bit. The Cedars-Sinai blog had a post in February of 2019 that talked about the neurochemical basis of kindness, called the science of kindness. Dr. Ishak talks about how oxytocin, the hormone that helps us to build social bonds, is released when we practice kindness towards others. Other chemicals that may be released include dopamine, the chemical that regulates the reward centers in the brain, and serotonin, the chemical that regulates mood. Each time we act with kindness, our brain releases these 3 chemicals, which is why it feels so good to be kind. But You can't do one kind act and then be good for the week. It releases these chemicals and you feel good for about 3 to 4 minutes. So for this reason, kindness is best practice as part of a daily routine so that you're constantly getting that release of those good chemicals. To quote Dr. Ishak, the rewards of kindness are many. They help us feel better and they help those who receive them. We're building better selves and better communities at the same time. I know if you're tracking Twitter or Facebook, it may seem like mean-spirited people are winning. When the world is so stressful for so many people, it's easier to turn inwards and tune out other people. But we do better and we feel better when we turn outwards. The Harvard Health blog had a post called The Heart and Science of Kindness on April 18th. Contributor Melissa Broderick brings up the truth that it's easier to be kind to others when you're being kind to yourself. She also brings up a very interesting study from 2018 in the Journal of Social Psychology that found that any act of kindness, whether it's an act of kindness to someone you know really well, an act of kindness to an acquaintance, something that you do nice that's for yourself, and even just observing, training yourself to observe when other people are kind, all of those acts of kindness have positive effects on happiness. Even just noticing other people being kind can release those 3 neurotransmitters that help us boost our happiness. I don't know if any of you have ever read this book. It's a classic, Frances Hodgson Burnett's A Little Princess. It's a book that I read when I was little. It tells the story of a kind, intelligent, little rich girl who's sent to a boarding school in England while her father works in India. And it's set during the heyday of the British Empire, when it was pretty common for upper-class British families to make their fortunes in India while their children were schooled in the homeland. The little girl, Sarah Crewe, is indulged in every way at Miss Minchin's school. And Sarah could have been self-important and petty with all of her advantages. But instead, she went out of her way to include everyone and to befriend the outcasts. Well, since this book has been out since 1888, I won't issue a spoiler alert. But spoiler alert, her father dies. Miss Minchin, who has always envied Sarah Crewe, does not put Sarah out in the street. Sure, that's sort of kind. But instead, she demotes Sarah to an unpaid maid of all work and children's tutor. Sarah could have taken this as something terrible and been just vindictive and petty and sad, but instead she took her demotion with grace and she worked really hard. She reframed this change in circumstances to call herself a princess in exile. She called herself a princess so that she would remember to be kind and gracious and poised and well-spoken and polite under all circumstances. She reframed her situation in ways that allow her to survive with good humor and grace. There are many passages from this book that stand out in my memory, but the one that is most applicable to today is Sarah is every day tasked to walk through the slushy, snowy streets of Victorian England with a big, heavy basket and bring back a bunch of hot new bread rolls back to the school. And one day she stops at the bakery, and the baker, who notices that Sarah is always very kind and always very polite and looks very, very, very hungry, the baker gives her an extra bun, and Sarah notices the extra bun and says, "Oh, ma'am, I'm sorry, you gave me an extra." And the woman says, "Oh, no, that's fine, honey, that's for you, you eat it." So Sarah goes out and she's so hungry and she's so grateful. She takes one bite of this bread and it's delicious. It has raisins in it. And she looks, and in the alley is another little girl who is even hungrier than she is and who is cold and sitting out in the snow. And Sarah, instead of walking by, gives this little girl her bun. It's not that she wasn't hungry enough to eat it, but she thought, this person needs it even more than I do. Well, Sarah's kind act inspired the baker to take in that freezing little orphan and give that freezing little orphan a job and a place to stay. I have been very fortunate that this pandemic has not left my family struggling like Sarah Crew. I have a place to live, I have food to eat, I am not dragging a heavy basket through the snowy streets of Victorian England in ill-fitting shoes, hoping for crumbs of decency from a vindictive employer. But there are lots of people out there who are facing hardship. Food pantries have been facing increased demand. Phil Abundance had a fill a trunk drive-through food drive to help combat hunger in our region. The charity Feeding America has seen demand increase by 57%. The evictions have been on moratorium, but as soon as that runs out right after Christmas, there are going to be probably thousands, millions on the streets. The other day, as I was driving home from dropping my kids off at school, there was a car stopped in the middle of the street on one of the twisty, hilly back roads near my house. And I pulled around it to stop in a parking lot for a hiking trail that was a few yards away. And by the time I had run back up the hill so that I could help them push, there were two other people who were also pushing that stranded car up the hill. And as we neared the turnoff for the park, another person stopped his car and came out and started pushing right along next to us. I don't know how those people on World's Strongest Man pushed tractor trailers, because pushing one compact sedan with 4 other people was exhausting. But we got it into that parking lot and everyone got back in their cars and drove off. I talked for a little bit to the stranded motorists. They were surprised at the number of people who jumped to their aid. They thought that they might have to push all by themselves because they didn't have masks, because they didn't have the money to afford them. They didn't have any fuel for their car. That's why their car stopped. They were afraid that people would see them and drive on by, because this is a time when we worry about staying distant. But even in this time, kindness wins. In trying times, Mr. Rogers always said, look for the helpers. As the speaker at UU Pottstown said last week, part of the tragedy of the COVID age is that quarantine and physical distancing mean that we have a tough time seeing the helpers. So that makes it all the more important right now to get out there and look for the good. We can all be little princesses in the best way. We can all be out there reframing our current challenges and exploring the good. Robert Fulghum wrote in his 1989 book, It Was on Fire When I Lay Down on It, the line between good and evil, hope and despair, does not divide the world between us and them. It runs down the middle of every one of us. I do not want to talk about what you understand about this world. I want to know what you will do about it. I do not want to know what you hope. I want to know what you will work for. I do not want your sympathy for the needs of humanity. I want your muscle. As the wagon driver said when they came to a long, hard hill, them that's going with us, get out and push. Them that ain't, get out of the way. I've always loved the writing of Robert Fulghum. He has a way of putting things clearly. He's one of those people who's seeing something that a lot of us would just drive by. Well, he got out and he helped. He helped that poor woman who one would think, well, she's not being very compassionate to her little nephews. But she was at the end of her rope. And instead of just judging, he got out and he helped. We all have the capacity to get out and push. We all can help push that wagon up the hill. We all can push that stranded car. We can push that Facebook discussion towards civility. We can push ourselves over and over again to choose kindness, to choose compassion, to choose to lift up those around us instead of looking the other way. We can choose one step at a time to be better than we want to be so that our actions echo with kindness. Thank you.
Thank you, Emily. Oh, wow. I know that I'm going to try to get those 3 columns listed out on a piece of paper or a chalkboard in front of me every day, and not only choose to try to reframe my thinking about things that are bothering me, but to try to find that act, even if it's a small one, that can make it kindness in the world. So thank you for that message. And now it's the time in our service when we recognize and lift one another up in love. So let us be fully present and listen with open hearts to the joys and sorrows of this community. If you wish to share something personally today, go to participants and click on it, and then click on raise hand, and we will help you to unmute yourself. And for everyone's benefit, please be brief. So we'll scan to see if there's anyone who's wanting to share something. And if Gil and Sherry can kind of back me up and make sure that I'm not overlooking anyone. Are we a quiet crowd this morning? Just want to give it one more minute. All right, well, it must be a blessing that we're all doing so well. But whether or not you shared, if you have something that...
Sorry, I think Gloria is trying to speak.
Okay, let me see. Where's Gloria? Ah, there we go.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, there. Go ahead, Gloria.
I want to thank the gentleman that played Santa Claus in Bristol Township. Every evening he was out riding in an open truck and fire truck and everything blasting and blaring, just going up and down the streets. And he was so sweet, and he smiled at everybody who popped their head out the door and said something to me that just made my day. And it was just an act of kindness of this man. He doesn't get paid for it. He's an older gentleman, but he was doing something kind that would lift everyone's spirits a tiny bit during this unusual holiday season. So I wish I knew his name. Anyways, things like that can make someone's day
Certainly.
or evening.
Certainly. Thank you for sharing that, Gloria. I think I'll scan really quickly one more time. And I think that's everyone. So whether or not you are sharing, or maybe you're holding something in your heart that you want to share, just, silently to yourself. We hope that what you know is that if it's a joy, we in this community join you in celebrating that joy. But for any sorrows or concerns that may be out there, may you feel our sympathy and compassion. So let's pause one more moment for a moment of gratitude, silent meditation, and prayer. So Avi returns to help us close our service by singing a song that was an interesting selection, What's So Funny About Peace, Love, and Understanding by Elvis Costello.
As I walk through this wicked world, searching for light in the darkness of insanity, I ask myself, is troubled times. My spirit gets so downhearted sometimes. So where are the strong? And who are the trusted? And where is the harmony, sweet harmony? 'Cause each time I feel it slipping away, it just makes me wanna cry. What's so funny about peace, love, and understanding? Oh, what's so funny about peace, love, and understanding? So where are the strong? And who are the trusted? And where is the harmony, sweet harmony? 'Cause each time I feel it slipping away, it just makes me wanna cry. What's so funny about peace, love, and understanding? Oh, what's so funny about peace, love, and understanding? Oh, what's so funny about peace, love, and understanding?
Yeah, I think that was funny, Sherry. We could hear you kind of coming along with them. But trust Avi to bring us rock and roll and make it fit into our spiritual message for the morning. So that was really, thrilling. So now we're going to go back to our friends, the Machera family, and let them close our service with the extinguishing of the chalice. You can read along the words in your order of service.
We extinguish our chalice, but we keep its light in our hearts. May it light our path as we leave this place and guide our way until we are together again.
It was sweet to see our friends and who was waving back. At least in your heart, I'm sure you were. So that concludes our service. Thanks for being with us. We hope that you will stick around for our virtual coffee hour. We'll